Hello my friends, this is Wolfgang with Tools for Ascension, and the tool I will be talking about today is face reading. And this is probably more a tool to use on yourself initially, now their self is the idea here. It will be a wonderful tool. I have been practicing face reading since I was a teenager, and whenever I was in crowds or around people, I was never bored because I could always read people. I mean, as an empath, I not only feel people or feel their chakras and maybe mental processes and emotions, but I can also, read their form. And the human form has basically two functions. One is as a tool. Let's say the eyebrows are there to prevent sweat to run into your eyes, but then there's also an expressive tool that is the shape of the eyebrows says something about the personality of the person as well. The eyebrows can be moved, let's say in astonishment or in a lazy greeting. And so they also have a dynamic expressive function. Just like with any signs about humans, please do not think that the reading of the face is the one and all measure which to judge a person. Actually, judging a person is really the wrong idea, because what is judgment always means I give a better or worse connotation to something. And what is better, a dump truck or a Ferrari? Well, it really depends on for what purpose. So the same is with judging human people. Some people are middle of the road, good at a lot of things, and that is good for their life experiences. And some people are very specialized on certain issues and tasks and skills. And so maybe, through listening to this and trying to understand what I'm having to say here, you will understand more about yourself and your environment. And of course, like always, I ask that whatever is coming from this video will be for the highest good in divine harmony with the most benevolent outcomes. So basically, our physical form is a pattern that says something about us, just like our DNA says something about it. It's just like astrology, like maybe your race or your socioeconomic background, impregnates you with a certain pattern. But also, so do your chakras, the function of your chakras, or your past life experiences, or your experiences in this lifetime, traumatic experiences, very, very positive experiences. They all leave an imprint on our personality and affect us, with patterns. So always, take everything with a grain of salt. There are a lot of patterns. I mean, just with astrology, there's Chinese astrology, there's Hindu astrology or Vedic astrology, and there's Western astrology, and they all say different things about the same person. And but they're all kind of describing reality, to a certain extent. So again, take everything I say with a grain of salt. The teachings that I learned are from Karl Hutter. He is from the last century. He was a clairvoyant portrait painter and promoted by Rudolf Steiner. And he was a very spiritual person, and I have found to be very, very true throughout my life, what I learned from this. And the basic principle is that our face represents our being from the physical up to our spiritual aspects. And let's just start with the physical aspect. Our physical aspect is the jaw. And like every cartoonist that describes archetype, and that is kind of an argument, is face reading just a hocus pocus idea? And no, because in film casting, archetypes are being used. A good cartoonist is using archetype, and a jog, somebody that's physically very able, are always shown with a strong jaw. Right? And that means if you have a strong jaw, you have a very strong physical presence. And there are certain aspects to the jaw. There is the how far does it go down, or the point of your chin, how much does it go down? Like Jim Carrey, the politician, would be a good example for that. And that generally means sustaining power, like a long distance runner, like a mountain climber. There would have somebody that keeps going and going and going, has a lot of endurance, that would have a jaw that extends down. Now, when you also have the jaw moving forward and backward, and the difference is very impulsive. Let's go this, let's do that, in this way, and not physical, not impulsive. There's also another aspect, which is the width of the jaw, especially here at these points. And I have found in my life that, people that have a wide jaw, they have a very strong physicality. And if challenged in a physical way, they can get very brutal. Physically, brutality is a great potential with people like that. And I've seen it again and again. Not just, shaking the cat and throwing it in somebody's face, taking heads and slamming them into the counter, extremely brutal. And so in general, people that have a wide head, wideness always means strength, so they are very strong in whatever area that is represented by the area of the head. That's just a general principle, like wide shoulders, means you have a lot of physical strength. Very easy to understand. So people with a wide chin, there can be, it's not a good idea to confront them either, because, they're going to stand their ground. Now when we move up, we come to the mouth, and the mouth is one of the parts of the face that is moving all the time. And it's quite obvious, there are the upper and the lower lip, and what does the lip symbolize? Just look at it. We have all seen children, and when children do step out, also old people that don't care anymore, they have that too. And so what does that mean? Well, it seems that the strength of the lower lip, actually compared to the upper lip, also represents the more lower aspect of the person, of the character, a more selfish, self-centered aspect. So when somebody pouts, it's not very good to argue with them. They're not opening to listening. But it also means sensuality. People where the lower lip is strong, they are like the pleasures of the flesh, particular, sexuality, but also eating, generally, the gross physical senses will be enjoyed. It is medically also supposed to be a sign of an extended colon, but I do not have empirical evidence for that personally, because I haven't dealt with that very much. But just observe yourself and other people and see what the proportion of upper and lower lip is. And let's look at the upper lip. When the upper lip is very powerful, like the beautiful actress Michelle Pfeiffer is a very good example for that. That means that the sensitive functions, the finer sensibility of the person are prominent, are there. So we would see the beauty in nature, or we would see beauty or hear beauty, appreciate beauty, appreciate the finer, more subtle things. So in comparison, from upper to lower lip, the upper lip would represent, perception of higher beauty, and the lower lip would mean perception of lower beauty. And that brings us to some variation on this theme, which is, first of all, the fullness of the lips. And of course it is clear, the fuller the lips, the more the sensitivity to higher or lower beauty, you could say. And then of course the more refined the cut of the lips are, the more refined the perception. So, for instance, when you look at the mouth of Mozart, the way it's being shown, he does not have a very full mouth, but whatever he has is supremely finely cut, very, very, very subtle. And then, of course, there could be like a very full mouth and not very finely cut, so you have, a very strong perception of lower and higher beauty, but not that much discrimination power. And the more finer it is cut, probably the more discrimination power or resolution you would get on those perceptions. And then, of course, there's also the wide mouth that is very full, and I would say that is represents the spectrum onto which the sensitivities are being applied. And of course the smaller mouth means it is more the perception is more centered around the more basic spectrum of human perception, and does not have the more fringe benefit. And then of course we have the other cases, the more extreme cases of, well, everybody has seen this here. Now, obviously, that means, the perception of lower and higher sensuality are being suppressed. Let's say when you ask somebody, how are you doing? And fine, that means they're not telling the truth. They're just following social convention, and there is a lot of suppression with those people. Probably something happened in their childhood or in their life that does not make it safe for them to express themselves, and so there is suppression going on. And there are people that have a mouth that is just cut with a knife. Lou Reed, the musician, comes to mind, and where this kind of suppression has become a permanent issue, I would say, and it is just a neutrality, a deadening of what is going on. I have seen exception to this, where high sensitivity, goes together with a mouth like that, but those are exceptions. People that have a small mouth, where it's small, not so wide, I found also they are very renounced, from monk-like renounced in a natural way, and of course, with a big mouth, they are very open to the higher and lower pleasures of life. And there are, of course, other expressions of the mouth, which are very important. I think the corners of the mouth going down, and it's pretty clear what that means. I have a negative attitude towards life, suffering, negativity in general, and if you catch yourself doing that, don't do that. People don't like that. They react very negatively to that. Plus, it shuts down your thymus gland, your immune system. So it's not a good idea to stay like that. And the angels could be pouring love on you, and you could not feel it. You cannot feel love in this way. And then, of course, there is this smiley. Especially, there are people where this is very subtle, nicely coming up on this side, and that is a loving, a positive attitude towards life. And of course, when we talk about symmetry of the face, the left side of the face represents your female aspect, and the right side of your face represents your male aspect. And we all, whether man or woman, have a male and female aspect, with your associated archetypes. And sometimes, when you look in the mirror, you will notice that your male aspect has full lips and is smiling, and your female aspect is kind of, the lips are much tighter and negative, or the other way around. And so there is the imbalance between your male and female aspect, and that's a good time to investigate. Now, when we move a little up, and this is, of course, this is your pure physical area, and here it gets more emotional, up to here, I would say. This is your emotional spectrum of yourself. So when we look at this area here, there are two basic settings for that. One is like this, where it's nicely swung, and the other one is like that, where it's kind of coming out. And it's, of course, very important to look of the quality of the tissue that is there. It is hard looking, dull and hard looking, unhealthy looking, or is it nice and soft and shiny? For every part of the face, this is always a good consideration, to see the state at which, this aspect of the person is. And we have found that the harsher and the more it's coming out here, the more insensitive, towards the feeling of other people or others, this person is. And, the kind of softer and sweeter and curved this way, the more sensitive and innocent, childlike, the approach and interaction with other people is. So somebody where this is very hard and coming out, there could be very tactless and very hurtful to other people. Of course, I have seen people that have this characteristic, and they overcome it by being very polite. They're expressing themselves very skillfully to not hurt other people, but of course in their own mental attitude probably they are rather judgmental or harsh the way they consider the world, but they have learned to hide this and to wear a mask. The next portion of the face, and this is quite a very crucial portion to look at, is the cheeks. There are actually two little chakras here in those cheeks, and those cheeks, they show basically the heart nourishment, the heart warmth, the heart energy of the person. And with heart energy, I do not necessarily mean, the pump, the circulatory system. I mean the loving aspect. Let me just project from through these chakras. And so those of you that are sensitive, you might have felt, this energy coming out there. So those people that have this nice, round, fluffy, healthy-looking cheeks, they have the potential of giving love. And where this is kind of drawn and gaunt, this would be like people that could be caused through starvation, but also anxiety and other causes, emotional causes. You cannot expect any nourishing, loving energy. There will be okay people, but this emotional quality, this loving chi, will not be coming from them. And I have seen in people, where this one, falls in, within minutes. So the argument that, those cheeks will be full when a person, has enough body fat does not apply. Maybe it affects it to a certain degree, just like Julius Caesar said, let there be fat people around me, because they're easier to get along with. They're not as harsh as the skinny people are in their whole emotional makeup. But as you probably all have seen, in your life, the expression of faces can change for minutes. I've seen people getting a telephone call that a loved one died, and poof, their face just changed, went through radical changes. So then, of course, we have the nose, and the nose represents the will of a person, and it's quite complicated organ to consider, or the will is quite a complicated issue to consider. To associate a big nose with a strong will definitely makes a lot of sense. But I've seen also people with small noses having a very refined and very strong will. So you always have to look at the whole personality that is there, and you never judge a person just by one body characteristics. I mean, for instance, if your crown chakra is open, or if your whole subtle body is completely activated and you're running Kundalini, you can override a lot of the hardware, of your body. I mean, you're just working in hyperdrive. And if your chakras are shut, you might have all the good hardware, and not much will come from it. So it's never, you always have to look at the whole. But in principle, I found the nose a very good indicator, of the potential will that a person has. And let me just talk a little bit about hardware and software. When I talk about the hardware of a body, there are aspects of the body that do not change in time very much. I mean, the shape of your skull does not change very much. The shape of your jaw, maybe the position of your jaw will change, but the general shape will stay. The general shape of the nose will stay. But I noticed, as a teenager, once I ate like 2 pounds of peanuts, and, my nose became very puffy, or I slept a lot and indulged a lot, so my will was kind of diluted, and my nose became very, very puffy. And then there were times where I was very disciplined and very focused, and my nose was very kind of bony and very nicely chiseled, very refined and chiseled. So I found a correlation between my will and my nose. But let's just talk about a little bit about more of the principle. Basically, if when we go from spiritually, to physical, so same with the nose. Let's say the forehead represents the thinking, and then the thinking flows into the willing, which is the nose, and then maybe expression through the mouth, and then physicality, doing in the physical, reality world of objects. So again, when we look at it, so the willing can be on very high, abstract ideas, as then it goes down and down, maybe to emotional ideas, and then it goes down to straight physicality. And the tip of the nose in generally represents the stomach, the eating. The famous thing is the strawberry nose. When the stomach is not very healthy, you can see, there's a blooming of the nose, or the nose is very pale or greenish. I've seen people, with stomach cancer, I mean, it's white and green and looks very unhealthy, no blood flow there. And of course, people that love to eat a lot, they have a very bulbous nose. And I also find that people that have a very pointy nose, they do not indulge that much in eating. But that's just a very general idea. Quite important, I think, is the area under your nose, between the nostrils, and that is supposed to represent, your sexuality. And in the sense, there are people where this part is very crude and very hard, and not subtle at all. And if you would apply a judgment, maybe ugly, and that would probably represent, the way they like their sex, or they enjoy sex. And then there are people where this is very refined, you have little ridges and this and that, and then it's just a beautiful, subtle tissue there. And so these are people that are very receptive to very fine, tender, loving sexuality. But, just, observe yourself, observe others, and get, your own judgment. You don't have to believe anything I say. I'm not your daddy, I'm not your guru. Just take me as a sounding board. Now, another very important aspect about the nose are the nostrils. And the general idea about the nostril is that the air intake, this being said, that people that breathe very deeply and heavily, or that just flare their nostrils before maybe they get angry and start breathing heavy and deeply, breath is associated with life force. And so people, where the nostrils are very big, they tend to breathe more and they have more life force. And that means, having more life force is just like running Kundalini. Of course, the Kundalini, affects all the aspects, but this is just, especially the spiritual aspects. And but just, having more life force through breathing is probably just expresses itself like as more intense emotion, as a more vivid experience. So when you around people that have big nostrils, they are wonderful storytellers, and when you around them, life is just exciting and extraordinary because you get a contact high from their life force, and in general this is called charismatic. So people that have, this big nostrils, they tend to be more charismatic because they have more life force. And then people that have a very weak nostrils, not much blood flow, and they're very, very tiny. They have little life force, and maybe they are more refined, but there is not much happening in terms of excitement of humpfda and yeah, life is good. We'll not find it there. Extremely important for those people interested in spirituality is the area basically where your thinking is moving into your willing, and this is basically the root of the nose, which is here, this area here. And I've found that with powerful psychics, this area forms kind of like a triangle, a very, very strong triangle. And some of those people, they can just talk with their eyes open to angels. Very easy to get those people into past lives, or do all kinds of, spiritual work, run energy. They have a focus that is rock solid. And then there is also what is generally called the warrior nose, the Greek warrior nose, where the forehead, basically the thinking, goes straight, without a break, into the willing. And, without the big triangle, so the psychic input is not as strong, but those people are very much focused, even under stress, they're willing, between their thinking and willing, there is no separation, no hesitation. So they're excellent, in battle, where there's a lot of stress. That's why it's called the warrior nose, but this could be, in any situation, they're always very focused, very here, very much in the moment. What's next? Well, as we're already here in this area, let's talk about the ears. And we all know about the Buddha ear. They show them like big and with long earlobes, and the long earlobes are associated with good health, especially when they are nice, flushed with blood. Very good health. Of course, according to acupuncture, the whole ear represents the whole body, so you always, look at the texture of the ear. Is it does it look healthy? Does it look unhealthy? Gives you a good idea. But I think one of the biggest distinction with the ear is, first of all, its beauty. Is, just generally, does your ear look beautiful, harmonious, or is it a disharmonious looking ear? And in the system that I have learned, and I found it to be quite correct, is like it. The ear kind of represents the character of a person. Now the size of the ear, I've seen people with very tiny ears, and they had kind of a childlike personality. And I've seen people with large ears, and even children with large ears, and they have been like always acting like wise old men. So the bigger the ear, the more wisdom is there, and the smaller the ear, the more childlike, the personality will be. I also found another variation on the ear, and that is the ear coming out, and it seems to be also related maybe to aggression. And the more it's coming to the back, it's kind of, peaceful attitude. But of course, it is also overcome, and influenced by other things like the jaw, etc., and the chin, etc., etc. Well, let's just move on to these lines here. I've seen in my life, it might show the state of the liver. Toxicity seems to be showing up there, or the state of the liver. Of course, I would probably judge the state of the liver more by acupressure, like this point when this hurts, or the clarity of the eyes, is the eyes yellow, or just the general pigmentation of the skin, is there the yellowish bilirubin showing. But when those lines are very sharp, that probably means there's quite some toxicity there. Now, when we look under the eyes, those rings under the eyes, they seem to be correlated to the sexual organs, or to the kidneys too. The kidneys with the adrenaline, they govern the part of the life force of a person, but also the sexual organs, are very much connected to the life force of a person. If you have a lot of life force, you can have really powerful sex, and if you have a lot of sex, then your life force can be depleted, and then you have those rings under your eyes, you have been up all night indulging yourself. But also, if your sexual organs, if your sexual organs are weak, or if your bladder is weak, if you have kidney, bladder problems, sexual organ problems, it will show under the eyes. And I've seen that people that do a lot of heroin and morphine, this could be just for painkillers, for instance, because they have a bad back, somehow or other it messes up the life force, or it messes these areas up, and they tend to have this really dark, there's a deep dark circle, under the eyes. Well, and let's talk more about the eyes. Of course, everybody knows that the eyes are the windows to the soul, and you can project a lot of energy out of the eyes. You can project love out of the eyes. That's just, you can project out of here. There are chakras from the eyes, and in general the right eye is the strong eye, and the left eye is the weak eye. But let's talk about the shape of the eye. And Of course, there are two extremes. There is the slit eye, and then there is the more open eye, the lotus eye. And I'm not talking about hysteria, where you can see the white of the eye, where there is emotional hyper-excitement, which is kind of a clinical situation. And basically, there are two different states of mind. We probably all heard about, the left and right brain, that the left brain is the more analytical, focused on detail aspect of perception, and that the right brain is the more female, seeing the individual part in the context of the whole, more, you could say, holographic perception. And so a person that has beautiful lotus-type eyes, this was like a Hindu ideal, has a very female perception, seeing the, let's say, a person walking by, and how is he walking, and how is the environment, and how is the whole picture, having a holistic point of view. And then the slit eye is more like a predator, just focusing on individual aspects of that person to the exclusion of everything else, just like modern sciences, the chemist just analyzing this little aspect of a big chemical reaction, of a big body of chemical reaction and psychological reaction and this and that, just focusing on a tiny, tiny analytical aspect of reality. And of course, sometimes you see somebody where one eye is slit and the other one is open, and that is called the view of a magician. He focuses with both perceptions at the same time. He sees the all-over view, and he also has the analytical view at the same time. So he's working on both frequencies. Just observe yourself in different emotional states in the mirror, and then observe the shape of your eye. Very, very interesting. And then we move on to the area above the eyes. And basically, you will find it's kind of connected also with your eyebrows. And I would say that a straight eyebrow kind of represents a more scientific aspect, realistic look at the world. And when you find those high, nicely curved eyebrows, these people tend to be more poetic. You could say they have a playful, flirty attitude in life. I'm not saying they're flirts, that it has a negative connotation nowadays, but it is just they're light flowing, more easy to get along, with playful with words. And so, same with the area kind of that is now between the eye and the eyebrow. So those people that tend to have like a nice curved eyebrow, this area up here is nicely curved outside, it's coming out. And those people tend to be excellent with language, learning different languages, and kind of more poetic, very easy for them to express themselves. And those people where it's kind of squeezed down, it's coming down here, and they have much more a mathematical understanding. They're very good with numbers, especially sometimes it's kind of squeezes over here, and those people are very, very good with numbers. And I've seen mixes of both those, and those people can express themselves very, very well and are very, very scientific. But this is something, you got to see for yourself and learn from life experience. Very difficult to describe, this kind of mix there. The lower part of the forehead, and we are all seen, the skull of monkeys and the Neanderthal man and primitive man, and then this area was very, very strongly developed, protruding, and then the kind of higher mental function, they were just moving away. The scientists in general say that this protrusion is associated with a visual intelligence. They describe it as a monkey, seeing like, there is 2 sticks, to the banana. They're very, very good visual understanding, very, very high resolution interpretation of visual reality. And when you see this in a person, they will be very good at practical understanding, let's say mechanical things. You look at it, you understand what's going on, like carpentry, other mechanics, or, as a artist that has to observe, that has to observe reality. Those people also tend to, be able to read other people very well, just from a visual point of view. I'm not talking about empathy here. This is just a visual intelligence. And, then, your intelligence, becomes more and more abstract, depending, how high your forehead goes. There are people, that have a kind of a triangular forehead, and, there is tends to be not much interest in abstract thought, in higher philosophy. It does not mean that those spiritual are not spiritual or cannot be spiritual, but there is no interest in, just the mental plane. They don't necessarily enjoy discussing abstract topics, and but they can be very, very spiritual. I've seen very, very spiritual people, but why talk about it? And I would also say, as a human being, you should reside in your heart and not on the mental plane. If you reside on the mental plane, you're really losing it. You're really missing the point. And even, in the Hindu teaching, they say that, it is very difficult to realize God as a jnani, as a scholar, means mental plane. It is much easier to realize God, through bhakti, means the heart quality. So do not think that I judge people. Actually, the wider the forehead is, the wider the horizon, the more different thoughts and ideas tend to be kept, or can be kept at the same time, which makes those people more open-minded or broad-minded. And when you have a narrow forehead, people tend to be more holding one thought at a time, be maybe more narrow-minded, maybe be more fanatic. Of course, there's all kinds of other conditionings coming into those aspects, but it tends to make them more nervous. So wide-headed people tend to not be so nervous as narrow-headed people. But again, just judge for yourself, observe for yourself. The top of the head, up here, this frontal portion, the more that is developed, it seems to, an anthropologist found that this is mostly with women, they tend to have a straight forehead, and where this part is much more developed, and they think it is the perception of the alter ego, of the other self, basically the children and the family that they have to take care of. And they have found that statistically more like the hunter and gatherers and warriors, they tended to, the forehead tended to be going away, and that means not so much compassion or awareness of the other self. It's not, you're not a good hunter necessarily when you have too much compassion. Now, when you go to the center of the head, and this is what Carl Hutter said, it's like you have, that is like the perception of the ultimate truth of God. And then the back of the head, this would be kind of the area over here, this would be the perception of ego. So I've seen people where this is very evolved, was very pronounced, and of course it's also considered a secondary sexual symptom for women. That's how you can see from a skull if it's a woman or not. They have a little bump here, and that is more ego, maybe more grace, awareness that is being shown there. And I've seen in Sri Lanka where people, where this is very evolved. And I have to say, they had very, very graceful movements. It was quite amazing. But, I would not judge people too much on that. Now we were just talking about the height of perception. So basically, the more you have a tower head, the more you will be interested in transcendental thinking. And the other aspect, it's the width again. And we talked about the wider, something is, the more powerful it is. And so let's say if your head is wide around here, this would show that you like to accumulate like food and lower level physical wealth. And then when it gets higher, you like to accumulate like more abstract type of wealth, like a house and land and things like that. And then maybe even higher, even more abstract, like position, fame and stuff like that. And then, up here, where, the abstract levels are in your thinking, and it turns into spirituality, more philosophical knowledge, and also spiritual knowledge. And so, I've seen skulls, of wonderful monks that are very renounced and transcendental and spiritual leaders, and it was kind of shaped, and I over-amplify, like that. It was narrow here, and then the widest point was up here. So they were very renounced, not caring much for material wealth and possession, but they're very much interested in accumulating a wealth of spiritual knowledge. And of course, the archetypical skull of the torturer, and for cartoonists is kind of like a pinhead guy, where, all they want is food and physical survival, and then all the other accumulation of other higher things, they don't care of this at all. Well, I hope this is helpful. I hope you do not judge me as a racist or of being prejudiced. This is far away for me. I've been incarnated in pretty much every race that there is on this planet. And I really do not like to judge. It's that it just creates separation and a false sense of superiority. And do not judge other people. First of all, just learn, look in the mirror in different states of consciousness, and observe, how, your shapes change, observe other people and try to understand, how they are different in their shapes to your shapes, and gradually, you will get an idea. You know, and please do not forget, you know, that is just our physical body, you know, representing, or part of the physical body. You know, of course, you know, your hands have symbolic value, you know, your feet have symbolic value, your whole body has symbolic value, as well as your body posture has symbolic value. I mean, there is so much more that you can read, and then you can read the aura, and then you can read the chakras, and then you can read the speech patterns. You know, there are so many patterns that you can read. So just to think, you know, because you know, you see one quality there that just, you know, will say everything about this person, you know, would be wrong. You know, it is all connected. So I hope this was helpful. I can give courses if you like to. If you invite me, I can give consultations. If you have seen other videos of mine, you probably figured out that I'm not a fanatic, you know, that I not, you know, one size fits all spiritual teachings. And so, you know, I will be happy to assist you in your awakening, in your spiritual awakening. That's what I call the series, you know, Tools for Ascension. So subscribe to my videos. If you press on the button below with show more, it will give you links and further information. Till next time, namaste.